Welcome back to the 21 Convention 2019 of Orlando, Florida. Our next speaker is a two-time returning speaker to the convention, this being his third speech at the 21 Convention since 2018. He is also a writer, personal trainer, author, and public speaker, and he is the Manosphere's #1 Chad Jesus and #1 ballet dancer. Without further ado, please let me welcome to the stage Alexander J.A. Cortez. Thanks, sir. Welcome back. Very good.
All right. How are we doing, gentlemen? Very good? All right. So, some of you are repeat attendees, and you guys know I have a favoritism towards mythology and archetypes in regards to trying to dissect sort of the meaning of things. The subject of today's talk, I'm going to just launch right into this. Ferocity, fitness, and femininity. What does it mean to be strong? So for context, why did I want to talk about this? I've spent the last roughly about 10, going on 11 years as a personal trainer, and I've seen in the fitness industry, I've seen in society at large, the question of strength come up again and again as a question of how do I become a person that has this capability. For a lot of times, from this very basic masculine perspective, we associate strength with just being able to lift weights. So if you can lift a lot of weight, if you can bench 3 plates, if you can squat, deadlift 400, 500, that means you're strong. You must be strong. What I saw with that over the years, though, is that I met very, very strong people, conventionally, who were powerlifters, who were strength athletes, but they also were very broken men. They're very broken human beings, and their strength, even though they could express it in one area of their life, they didn't have it within all the others. So rather than think of strength as just being a singular physical quality, I thought of it as more of a transcendent quality as to how does it actually translate across the entire breadth of a man's experience. And that said, how does being strong contrast men from women, since that is the most probably powerful differentiation? So this is a artistic representation of Hercules. Most of you are probably somewhat familiar with Hercules, or Heracles is the original way of saying it. Hercules had to complete 12 labors. He had to suffer. He had to endure pain. And if you really get into this mythology, this is him. This is a very archetypal type image. He's taking on the Nemean lion. Hercules, he didn't just have to be strong in being physically powerful. He had to have cunning. He had to have intelligence. And he had to suffer repeatedly over the course of his life, not just in the 12 labors he did to redeem himself, but in labors afterwards. If you actually look at the whole mythology, he was basically cursed from birth, and up until the time he died, he was still struggling. And that metaphor for life, that life is struggle, life is pain, life is suffering, there's a reason why he was so popular in mythology. It wasn't because he won something and then got to ascend and be a god and relax. It was that his entire life was essentially a battle against the unknown and against the forces of Earth. Now, modern society, I like this image as well. Technology has had the effect of diluting masculinity and femininity. One of the tyrannies of the modern age is that because we are so comfortable, we don't know how to be strong because we're actually not required to be competent at anything. It's very easy to set up your life and engineer it where you can be lazy and you can have food delivered to you. You can hire a personal trainer and have your exercise programmed for you and not have to actually learn anything. You have the availability through apps, through various technological means that you can remove all sources of discomfort, which on one hand, it encourages sloth, it encourages laziness, it encourages all these sinful qualities. On the other, it makes us lose sight of actually developing ourselves, since we have nothing to test ourselves against at all. We're all cogs, biological cogs, in this infernal machine. We also deal with this. So I like this image because I hate these motherfuckers with a passion. So we have bred a generation of defective faggots. So we have men, open mouth, agreeable, essentially all clones of each other, and we have you could call it the betaization of men, the blue pill culture of men, the mommy girlfriend, the mother may I phenomenon. We have men who lack strength so much that they associate masculinity with being agreeable. So they associate masculinity not just with being weak, not just with agreeing with everybody, but they associate it with a lack of contrast. They try to make themselves more similar to everything that they think they should be equal to. Equality is tyranny in that way. It makes us less of who we are. I've said this before, and I'll say this many times over. If you operate within that paradigm of being a beta-tized man, you become blind to your own nature. Men that are blind to themselves are blind to the nature of women by default. If you don't know who you are, if you don't know what it means to be a man, women are always going to be unknown to you. And going, let's say, like beyond like the red pill, I've called it sort of the clear pill now in various contexts. If you look at the fundamental problem of the modern age, it's this. We don't know what our nature is anymore. We don't know it on a transcendent level. We don't know it on a chthonic level in regards to just the earth and living our day-to-day lives. We don't know ourselves. Testosterone is what makes a man, fundamentally biologically. This hormone, this molecule, this drives almost every aspect of male behavior. This makes us competitive. This increases our muscle mass, our bone density. If you lack testosterone, if your testosterone levels are low, if you are hypogonadal, you're not going to feel like yourself. So on a very, very basic level, if you take away nothing else from this, if you're feeling low energy, you're feeling depressed, you have struggle with anxiety, any of those things, get your testosterone levels checked. If it's medium, if it's low normal, if the doctor's telling you that your 200 level on a 1,000 point scale is fine, you need to increase that. Only a man can tell a woman how to act. Women are implicit, men are explicit. This image is from James Bond, I think it was the last one, Spectre, which is a terrible movie, but it still had some good images in it. I like this scene because she obviously has very come-hither sexual energy to her, but he ignores her to go fulfill a duty, but she is still attached to him. If you are a strong man explicitly, then women will implicitly want to follow your lead. If you're not that way, then you will struggle to have to tell women what to do, and women will always resent that. Again, strength in this context, we have this quality over and over again that becomes relevant no matter where we want to apply it. Where does strength come from? I've said this, I should probably write a book about this at some point, since I've probably explained this God knows how many times, but it still hits. Biological necessity. You have to do two things to survive as a man, just two. You have to protect yourself from the environment, from other men, from nature itself. You have to protect yourself. If you can do that, you have to feed yourself, you have to provide. Everything that makes a man, it comes from those two things. We are evolved for violence. I think this is John of Mars. Again, I like this image just because of the sheer ridiculousness of it. But we see in this image the classical sort of battle of man. He's protecting a woman. It's man against nature. He is obviously a very heroic-looking figure. And these kinds of things resonate with us because we know they're true. This is always going to be true. It's never not true. If the lights come down and society gets reduced to ash, this is how we operate. Being strong also allows you to engage in heroism, the hero's journey. This is Joseph Campbell. For those of you guys who don't know who that is, he was a professor of mythology. Was somewhat akin, you could say, almost like the Jordan B. Peterson of like the 1970s, a little bit that way. But if you're strong, you can go on this whole circular cycle of life and death. You can become a man, you can ascend, you can proceed through the world, you can meet mentors, you can cross thresholds, you can do battles, you can seize knowledge. You have all this capacity to live in a way that the average man does not, but you can't do this if you're weak. On a very basic level, very, very basic level of just sheer physical prowess, what do you need to be able to do? You don't need to be able to actually lift weights. And I say that as a personal trainer, I've been doing this 10, 11 years. Lifting weights is a means to just build muscle upon your body. It does not make you badass. It's badass to watch somebody lift something heavy. It's badass in the sense that, yes, that takes discipline, takes confidence. You've clearly devoted yourself to something. But the environment of lifting, and I've gotten away from it as I've gotten a little bit older, the environment of lifting being in a air-conditioned, perfectly machined, precision gym, everything's balanced for you to pick up, that's good to develop a basic level of physical competency, sort of general physical preparation. That does not actually prepare you for life at large. It's only in modern society where we can get away with just being able to walk. What do we actually need to be able to do? These things. We need to have endurance. We need to have stamina. We need to be able to breathe. We need to know how to move across ground. We need to be able to walk, run, jump, vault, balancing, crawling, being able to climb, swimming, lifting, carrying, throwing, catching, be able to defend ourselves. These are all the skills that allow you to navigate a wild environment or conflict-driven environment if you're in a war situation or just a high-tension situation. Most of us, very, very few of us, actually train to do any of this. We train to move things from point A to point B. And we're limited by the movements that we do. We're limited by the two-dimensionality of it. So I want you guys to think bigger than that. This is Phil Heath, 7-time Mr. Olympia. The funny thing about strength in this context, when you look at this image, is that if we are overly explicit with our strength, if we are overly explicit with how we develop our body, that becomes almost gay. There's a homoerotic element to this. Because if you compare that to women, women display their femininity by overt displays of beauty. You see a sexy woman, she looks sexy, she makes herself very vulnerable, she makes herself very available, she makes herself essentially enticing to look at, and we find that sexy when we see it in a woman. When we see it in a man who has developed himself for the sheer purpose of just showing up how he looks, in some cases you might find this really impressive, and it is. That's insane looking. And another perspective, though, we also find this rather odd where this is very functionally useless. And he's built himself up simply to be seen with nothing beyond that. This is a personal friend of mine. This is Martin Lisis. He's the world's strongest man. He's the same height I am. He is 340 pounds, so he is almost double my weight. He's obviously a very strong guy. Now, we consider this to be more functional because even though he's big, he obviously has not trained for a look. He is trained to perform. He is trained to do. With all this said, going beyond this and talking about strength, this is why I titled this slide Beyond the Red Pill. As I said before, if men that don't understand themselves will no longer understand women. If finding out that women like to fuck tall men who can fight and fuck, if that's surprising to you, you got bigger problems. And I've said this before as well, if you want to get in touch with yourself, lift weights, learn violence. That will do it for you. Women rely on men to make life good, and men use violence to make life good because with violence we can mitigate bad things. We can do battle with each other. Violence is explicit that way as well. Men fight, women watch you all the time. So the way that you display strength across different domains of your life, that's always going to create an effect and an aura around you. Men that are strong, let's just say everywhere, almost everywhere, they're always more enticing and they're always more charming and they always draw people to them because they have a quality that fills the void where that would be lacking. This is the classical hierarchy of how strength is expressed. You have man versus nature, which we really don't have to deal with anymore. We're not in battle with the environment. We're in Orlando, we're in a hotel, this is an air-conditioned room. Nature is not something we think about. You have man versus man. That still exists obviously today in intersexual competition, in trying to get laid, and there's other guys in the bar. It exists in fighting, it exists in sports of all kinds, it exists in war. We also have the inner battle, the internal battle of man versus himself, of you in conflict with you, and that is, in most cases, our biggest battle. We also have man versus women, which this can be on a level of, let's say, playfulness, it can be a level of enjoyment, or it can be, for a lot of guys who really struggle with women, it can be a lifelong struggle that sort of takes them apart mentally, psychologically. This is from the movie The Gray. I love this movie. It's a very good man movie, if you want to watch it. But Liam Neeson, he is suicidal in this film. He wants to kill himself, but he is forced to do battle with nature. And he loses that battle very badly, but he still decides to struggle against it. And it's a very good display that strength can not conquer anything, but it can overcome cowardice, if nothing else. Mask of Zorro, this is man versus society, man versus man. But what does this do? What is he able to do with this when he has his costume on, and if he watches the movie, he trains himself, and he gets strong? Strength, and I'm taking this from Ken last night, but strength allows you to be vulnerable. Strong men can be vulnerable, Ben, because the stronger you are, the harder you are to hurt. So this has always been sort of my umbrage, so to speak, with some of the older school manosphere stuff, was that a lot of it was based on risk mitigation, especially with women. I don't want to get hurt, I don't want to be emotionally wounded, I don't want to lose, so how can I minimize risk in all my interactions? That's how a pussy thinks, that's a coward. If you're strong, you take on risk because you're not afraid of being hurt that way because you are so strong that you can be taken from again and again and again, and you're not going to run out. If you're so emotionally fragile that one woman, one relationship can ruin you, you were always weak to begin with. So you might be, you might have, let's say, alpha understandings of women, red pill understandings, but you're still beta, you're still a bitch. Nothing's changed. This is Joe Dempsey. This is him beating a man to death, basically. We respect this man because, again, he uses violence, and he did not lack for women, obviously. We have the yin, we have the yang. In the modern environment, we are very yin-driven, and I'm borrowing this from Grannon earlier this year, but it was very insightful. So yin and yang, you've probably seen this image. What does this mean? Yang is masculine. Yang we associate with strength, we associate with firmness, we associate with penetration. We associate with hardness. We associate with being rigid. We associate yang energy with being something that forms. So we associate with masculinity. Masculinity brings order. Then you have yin. You have the dark portion. Yin is capacious. Yin is a space you fill. Yin is being accommodating. Yin is softness. Yin is darkness. Yin is chaos. And ideally in our lives, we maintain something of a balance of the two. As men, we're always going to be predominant through here, but we still, even within strength, we have some flexibility. We are balanced out by our oppositional qualities. If we don't have that, and we become men who are yin, then we have the modern world. We have men who, as has been said many times, act like women for the sake of wanting to get along with women, to be like them, and they're very frustrated by it. The more you try to make things equal, the more corrupt the world is. So we have complementary opposites in that way. The idea, if you are a very masculine man, is that you can finally understand nature of the world, femininity. You can finally understand these areas. Again, this requires strength, though, to express your masculinity. This image I like, I like this dynamic. So the Joker is a very masculine guy. He's a psychopath. He kills people. He does it for fun. He has no problems using violence. But he also has an element of femininity to him. He's garish looking. He wears makeup. He has yin energy. And I'm not saying to be like Joker, since that would be fun, but you'd be probably arrested really fast in the United States. But it's a good example of how if you take the qualities and you dial them up to level 10, they have this powerful effect on people around you. And ultimately, or resultingly, he doesn't have any trouble seducing women that way. There's a reason why the Joker sort of archetype has become very popular the last 5 years. Women are so starved for masculine energy that they'll look for it anywhere in society. So this gets fetishized. Now, with strength, however, you have a quality of predictability. If you are so rigid in trying to develop yourself as a man across all these areas, I gotta be strong, I gotta make money, I have to be confident, I have to have competency, you can hit a level where you're no fun. Now, the thing, and those of you guys who know me know I love this movie, Beauty and the Beast. So if you look at Gaston, and you look at Beast, they're actually quite similar. They're both assholes, basically. They're both really big guys. So I mean, this guy's an animal, but whatever. So they're both stereotypically tough that way. They're actually quite similar mimetically. The problem with this is that he's very predictable. He's super predictable, and he tells her exactly how life's going to go, and that makes it boring for a woman. This guy, she has no idea what's going to happen. He might eat her, but he has a fucking library. This is why this works. Let's talk about this. We're going to talk about this, okay? She falls in love with him. Why? He has a library, and he says, you know what? I know I'm being an asshole to you, and I'm insane, and whatever, and I'm going to die, and something. I'm all conflicted, but you seem to like learn. You have an imagination. Here's an imagination room, and I want you to be imaginative. So he encourages experience. He's experiential that way. Women will attach themselves to men who provide experience. That's why women are attracted to certain archetypes of men. That's why women like bad boys. It's like women like assholes, because you don't know what's going to happen. So you're going to grow the world in which she lives in. This is fucking boring. That's living in a house and being a wife. This is why tradcons are dumbasses. I want a tradcon wife. You're a worthless piece of shit. Even if you lived in those countries where you think that exists, you'd still be boring. Be like this guy, except you don't have a castle, but be more like this, okay? Because this is unpredictable. This is actually chaos, and this is fun. There's a reason why girls love this fucking movie. Everybody loves this fucking story for a reason. For a reason, it reveals the fundamental truth of men and women regarding strength and contrast. He is completely dissimilar to her. They have absolutely nothing in common other than male, female. Okay, there's some, by this way of differentiation, friction, energy. But it actually works out in the end. And what happens? He's such a brute, and he's such an asshole, and he's so tough, but you know what? It actually allows him to be vulnerable for her. So she gets, as I've often said, she gets the alpha, beta, everything asshole, the guy that's infinite everything, and it's all wrapped up in the same man. That's the ideal. You can't do that if you're a weak bitch, though. Now, the harem thing, I always like this with strength when guys talk about, like having confidence with women, confidence, having a lot of girlfriends. Traditionally, to have a harem, you had to kill a lot of people. A lot of people. I can guarantee none of you, probably maybe a few of you are operators. Most everyone here, you haven't killed a lot of people. You haven't killed anyone at all. You haven't gone to battle with anything. So that would be the context in which you could get a lot of women because you are the ultimate protector in that way. Life's comfortable around you. In Western society, this doesn't really exist anymore. Islamic world, kind of, yes, it could, but that's a whole different conversation, and I'm not going to dive down that rabbit hole. Now, if you're strong enough and you differentiate yourself from the world enough in physicality and persona and personality and how you express yourself, you'll find at the end of your life, or you find out enough period of time, that women are naturally drawn to you. In Greek mythology, wisdom is Athena. Wisdom is a woman. Now, we don't usually associate in modern world women being wise, honestly. Most women, honestly, are not. They're not. But if you are a man who is a man, women will reveal wisdom to you by way of contrast. And Athena is sort of the embodiment of that. Perseus and Medusa. What is the archetype of Perseus facing Medusa? He is facing the forces of yin. He is facing the forces of femininity. He is facing the forces that seek to disrupt the earth. And he doesn't take them head on. He reflects them back at itself, and he manages to be headed. So the ultimate way to sort of conquer the world as a man is to conquer that chaos within yourself. Again, you can't do this, though, if you lack courage. On a very basic level of physical representation, what do we associate with strength? So this is now the useful portion of the talk. It's only a few things. Don't be fat. 15% body fat or less. So all you guys, they're in here, I need to lose weight, what should I hit body comp-wise? Get your body fat down to about this range. Doesn't mean you're going to look like a Greek god, but you will look better. And subsequently, you will increase your muscle mass. If you want to look heroic, that's a 20-inch difference between your shoulders and your waist. I could have pulled up slide after slide of Bond and Achilles and Black Panther and whatever guys, they got big shoulders, they have a small waist. Basic. If you're going to lift weights, don't overcomplicate it. A squat type movement, you're going to push things, you're going to pull things. That's the very basic drill preparation for just putting muscle in the body. To develop confidence, to develop some sense of competency, to really learn about yourself, learn violence. Which kind of violence? Boxing, jiu-jitsu? I don't care. Do something that makes you afraid to do it, and you actually get hit. So there's obviously a variety of disciplines available to you. Learn how to throw a punch, learn how to take a punch, learn how to get choked out, learn to deal with pain. Cultivate excellence through contrast. Definition by contradiction. The more you develop yourself, and the more, I won't say extreme you become, but the more accentuated you develop your various qualities, the more you're going to define reality without having to force anything. The problem for a lot of younger guys when you're in, let's say, like teens, early 20s, is that you can read this stuff and you can kind of practice it, but you don't actually have the life experience to really understand it. So that's why young men are oftentimes characterized by trying to sort of brute strength everything. You try to make things happen. And that can work, but that also can create situations where people can see through you very readily. If you do this over time, though, and you cultivate excellence through these various contradictions, you'll find that life will rather align itself for you without you needing to be breaking things in that matter. If you're not strong, you're weak. How do you know that? What makes you insecure? I could dive into all these different domains, like what makes you insecure. If there's an area of life in which you fear approaching it, talking about it, feeling it, engaging with it, then that's a place to develop. And there's going to be various pathways to do that. That could be making money. That could be your emotions. For some of you, probably that do need therapy, in all honesty. I say that sincerely. That could be your emotional history. That could be past trauma. That could obviously be women. That could be being around other men. A lot of men today lack the ability to form male bonds because they've been so isolated that when they finally get around a group of guys, they don't know how to talk to each other. And they're actually afraid to be like, they're afraid to share feelings. They're afraid to share emotions. They're afraid to share experiences. So a fear of other men could be the area in which you need to develop. All this said, ultimately, if you're going to, where the last slide to go? Okay, whatever. Last slide's gone. If you're going to survive in the world, strength is going to be what you get tested by. If you're not strong, you're weak. And if you want to live a life that is on your own terms, you have to take that quality out of yourself and you have to put it into the world at large. If you do not bring out what is within you, it will destroy you. And I will end the talk there. So I made sure to give enough time, since I think the questions are where the best meat of the conversation is. Questions, we got 20 minutes. What do you want to ask? Whoever wants to go up to the mic. If there are no questions, then we can end the conversation as is. Yeah.
Hello, Mike Chuck. Yeah. Thank you for your speech. It was really, really mind-opening.
I appreciate
I
that.
was
Thank
just
you.
wondering, what do you mean by cultivating excellence? I kind of want to get it more clarified for myself.
Yeah, so cultivating excellence, so the most direct way to think about that is that every area of life that you recognize you can improve, you want to follow some kind of standard. So working out is the easiest portion, or probably the easiest subject for this. And for those of you guys who really want to get more into the fitness aspect, my workshop later on, it will just cover straight fitness talk. So if you want you want to talk about that, come to the workshop. But cultivating excellence is about following standards. It's about setting a standard of practicing, a standard of behavior, setting a performance metric of some kind, and then trying to reach it. So that could be something very basic. It could be, I want to bench press my body weight 10 times. That'd be a standard. That could be a standard with income. I make, let's say, $5,000 a month now. I want to make 5,500, and I'm going to find a means to do that. When you set a standard, that allows you to reverse engineer the pathway to that standard. So it's just essentially setting a goal. It's setting a, let's say, I don't want to say like a future self, but it's setting a version of your, yeah, it is. It's creating a version of yourself in the future of what that looks like, and that requires you to actually detail what you want to do. What do you think you're capable of? Okay, if I have that, now let me work backwards, and that reveals the process. Every area of your life that you lack standards in, you're probably lacking in that area, period. It's very rare that you will have a man who is so naturally good at something and he's never had to think about it, and it just comes to him, but he embodies excellence. That's not really the case. If you want to be good at anything, you have to consciously think about it and then develop it through various means. So, like for yourself right now, just think about yourself. What do I feel I'm lacking? What I want to improve on? Okay, what is a standard I could set for myself? And then let me create a pathway, a system, a goal to getting there. And then, for that, you'll have various plans. You'll have a schedule. You'll learn discipline. Discipline is essentially the daily practice of what your standards are. We reveal our standards through our daily discipline and our daily consistency. That's another area of life that a lot of guys lack today, where not only are they not good at anything, they actually don't do anything to develop goodness. They don't do anything to develop discipline. They live in a reaction to themselves. So then this gets into the question of intentionality. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to be intentional about it. I'm going to be actionable. So now I'm going to have to direct my energy towards something. So that creates its own conversation. I can keep sort of spinning off on this. But for everyone listening, if you want to get good at something, find a standard, find the people who are the best in the world, figure out what that is, and then do what they do, or at least do, let's say, the model of what they did to get there.
All right, thank you.
No problem.
Yes, Alexander had a question for you. If you could maybe talk a little bit about the role that discipline and, importantly, deferred gratification plays with this process of rebuilding yourself in a new image.
With delayed gratification, so one of the ways that strength is expressed, since strength is really just a metaphor, is that men, we will put off pleasure in the present for a payoff in the future. Or we will put off short-term gain for long-term success. And what does that reveal about us? When you practice delayed gratification, when you practice discipline, it's a man that has foresight. So there's an element of wisdom to that. It's not just, I'm strong enough not to do this thing right now. That does require willpower. That does. That's the sheer willpower. Here's this thing, you can do it right now. I'm not going to do it. Okay. Oh, we have great willpower. Okay, cool. Yeah, I have willpower. I'm just choosing not to do something. That's very instantaneous. The deeper quality to that, the sort of the meta quality, is that I can look at this action, I can extrapolate it 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, and I can see the consequences of engaging with this. I can see what it will do to me. I can see what it will turn me into. So we have second, third, let's say fourth order effects. And then I actually make a choice, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do this instead. Even if this, whatever this is, even if I do this discipline, this systematic practice, even if it's uncomfortable. So you're not just showing willpower, you're not just showing that strength of character, you're showing foresight. You actually think about the future. This is why we admire people who become very, very skillful and excellent at various things, whether it be music, whether it be fighting, whether it be, it could be driving, whether it be weaponry. We watch that person, we can tell somehow, we know it intuitively, they didn't just get good at this because they loved it, they could see what they could turn into. They actually had a plan for their process of being, and then they applied it. And that's a rare quality. again, most men today, it's just all reactionary. You're always reacting to your past decisions, your past mistakes, your emotional turmoil, and you don't practice discipline anywhere. The only discipline you sort of practice is just being chaotic. Hopefully that answers the question, Ivan. Yeah.
Thank you. So in the beginning, you mentioned how most men only have maybe one or more area to express that strength through, and how that can be a detriment, especially if you're dealing with a female relationship. Are there any areas or personal stories that you can share of your personal experience where maybe you were lacking in one or more areas that you had to enhance in order to heal, enhance, or grow a relationship with a woman?
Oh, yeah. So this is about, 3 years ago? So I'm 30 now, I was 27. So for most of my 20s, I did not have any foresight at all. Like none. I was this being of this pure, sort of this reactionary, let us say, instinct. So I went broke multiple times throughout my 20s. I was never, up until 27, I didn't have money. I didn't even have reliable income. I was always just sort of on the edge of like, okay, I'm gonna have to change apartments, I'm behind on rent, I'm behind on these bills, whatever, it'll work itself out. I relied on sort of just luck to take care of me. And on a certain level, that's very carefree, and that's very much the hallmark of like being a young man, but that's obviously, that's not maturity. That's not going to get you to any place of ascension in life. And I got checked when I was 27, I was in a relationship, and the girl I was with at the time, and it was a serious relationship, she told me flat out, she's like, you have nothing to show for yourself. You're just a fit guy who looks good, like you're hot, but that's it. That's literally it. That's all you've gotten good at. That's it. Literally just your body and what you look like. That's it. And she was right. I couldn't argue with that. What am I going to say? No, that's not true. Well, I have expertise in training. Well, if you're such an expert, why are you broke? If you're so good at something and you're thinking the best in the world, how come you can't get paid enough for it? What's the counter argument? Well, it's not about money. No, it is about money because you're behind on your rent and you got like 10,000 grand that you owe to like 8 different credit cards. All right, maybe it is about money. Like I had no response to that at all. And that was just one of those sort of like inflection points. I realized like, okay, yeah, at a very, very basic level, I need to provide for myself better. I need to get my income up. I need to realize that I don't know anything about the value of time, which that's its own deep conversation. I don't value my own time. I have not thought about the future beyond literally like a week. I should probably maybe think maybe 2 weeks. Literally, like maybe I should think about 2 weeks a month. That could be useful. So that really revealed all the deficiencies of my character. And that's very remedial on a certain level for a lot of you guys. Hopefully you're not as stupid as I was. Maybe some of you were. But that was like a moment in time where that was an immense struggle for probably like 2 months where I felt really shitty about myself. I'm like, but you did this to yourself. Like, whose fault is this for being in the situation you're in? It's you. But it took a woman to tell me that. If that had been a man, I wouldn't have listened. Because I had buddies at the time who were like, bro, you need to get your shit together. Fuck off. Don't say shit to me. But someone that I loved and I was with and actually I knew cared about me, that actually hit. That had emotional resonance. So in that way, in the way that men test the world, women also always will test men. That's really what shit tests are. It's seeing if you have balls. But it's also revealing to you that, there's something that you fundamentally lack that you actually could develop in yourself. And that is what women are very, very, very good at, or can be good at, let's say. Some women just want to destroy men for the sake of their confidence, self-esteem. To bring a man down from a peak is a woman's biggest accomplishment. And we've seen that today with Me Too, with all these different things. But to get a man to rise, I would argue, and it'd just be misogynistic, not that I give a shit, but a woman's greatest accomplishment is to get a man and elevate him. That's winning at the world. That's winning at life. That's showing that you know how the universe operates. So that was one of those moments.
So you mentioned Beauty and the Beast with Gaston being very predictable. Mm-hmm. How do you cultivate the desire, the unpredictable aspects of the Beast more? What I'm trying to get at is a lot of times, when I'm talking to women a lot, it tends to be a very predictable type of conversation. How do you kind of bring those aspects of the Beast out? Okay, so there's a few levels to this. On a very basic level, my buddies and I used to say this to ourselves. This was back when I was in my early 20s, living in LA, going out, talking to girls. But we'd say, brutes get sloots. So sloot being sluts. So this, basically, if you're really an emotional asshole, this makes fun of her. There will be women that will obviously want to sleep with you. Very basic.
Like, getting laid is not hard at all. But what were we actually really doing there that was fundamental to that? We were just kind of unpredictable. It was talking to a guy, and he wasn't trying to be nice to you. He wasn't trying to accommodate you, obviously. He was not, in any way trying to be agreeable. We would just be ourselves. So we'd be dicks, and we'd talk, and we'd make jokes, and we'd have inside jokes with each other. But it was fun because the girl would be trying to figure it out. You're making her laugh. I mean, this is very basic stuff, but later on when I reflected back, I'm like, because we were, let's just say, relatively good-looking alpha guys, like we had keyed in on a sort of truth of interaction without realizing it. Now, I'm not encouraging you to be that much of an asshole, since we cause a lot of hurt feelings all the time, which if you feel guilty, whatever. But the meta quality to that is that you are curious. You're curious, and you actually are a man where, because she can't quite figure you out, what does that mean? Does it mean that you're crazy? No, it means that actually you're perceptive to life, and you see things beyond what the average person sees. So a lot of the reasons why men are just boring today is because you're not curious about anything. You have no experience that show that you have no cool experiences. You speak only one language. You haven't traveled. You haven't done anything, studied anything, looked at anything, thought about anything on a deep level where you could share insight. There's nothing about you that is, let's say, magical that way. It's very mundane. So the idea of like, how can I be more spontaneous or curious or get women to be more into me? You have to have some depth to you that is actually worth exploring. This is why like musicians always kill it so well, because by creating music, it's like, wow, you create something and then you perform it, and somehow your brain works in that fashion. I'm not a musician at all, but I have friends who are. They always get girls. They can play guitar and this riff, and it's like, wow, but what is it? It's artistic. What is artistry? Artistry is to create something from raw matter, from nothingness. There's a very transcendent quality to that. Even watching sports, guys that are athletes. Athletes can be dumbasses. They can be absolutely brotarded. But they're on a field, it's a dynamic situation. You see someone where they're taking risks, they're acting on their feet, they're thinking in the moment, they're in the flow state. Wow, that's sexy. You might be an idiot off the field, but watching you there, like, that's sexy. So again, we have that element of sort of almost chaos to ourselves, a masculine form of chaos. If everything about you can be written on a piece of paper and it sounds like a resume, and that's what you're sharing, hoping that that's going to be the thing that attracts women to you, they're not, because you're easy to figure out. So to cultivate that quality within yourself, take up a hobby, study philosophy, do some things where it actually would be intriguing for someone if they spoke to you about it, that defies the norm. Get a motorcycle, if nothing else. Just don't die.
Thank you.
No problem.
In the previous question, prior to this one, you had said that you were in your 27, and that previous relationship, the woman was saying that you had nothing going for you, but except for your body, but you had excellence as a personal trainer. So yep. Let's say you've cultivated a means of being excellent, mm-hmm. and you have that skill. What are some strategies that you could use to monetize that properly so that you can change your situation?
So this is like a brand building, money making question. So the thing I realized with expertise is that when I was that age, I've been writing professionally for 7 years. And when I got started, I worked for free. Eventually, I got paid like $300 an article. I realized that for writing, for relative to what I was good at, writing was an infinite skill, and that there was a market for knowledge. And I realized that there was a market for just learning in general. And what I'm telling you right now is sort of the crystallization of things that took a long time to figure out. When I first started writing, I was just happy that people paid attention to me. I'm like, oh, people are finding what I write useful, cool. I'm good at something. I get good feedback. This is great. But I didn't have any sense as to how that could translate into money at all. I was just doing something that I enjoyed, and that, I do enjoy teaching. I love to teach. But it wasn't until a few years later that I realized, okay, teaching is an infinite market because everybody in the world is a beginner at 99.99% of things. So everyone in this room right now, you basically are all amateurs at almost everything except maybe 2, 3, 4 things. Everybody's an amateur. So I realized that, and it was sort of this moment, I'm like, wait, there's definitely a market for the knowledge I have, and everybody needs it more or less because most people are not fit, especially in Western society. People want to become better looking. People want to learn how to train. People want to learn how to do all these things. I could teach this to people. And if I can teach it, I could probably find some way to create profit from it, because in teaching people things, you need to create resources, ebooks, courses, whatever the case may be, some packaging of information that delivers it in a continuum. Okay, now I can actually make money. That was sort of the basic realization. Yeah, and then with that came the marketing aspect. And the marketing, like, marketing has a bad rep oftentimes, like guys are very comfortable with self-promotion, but you're really just finding people who need what you're teaching. That's the basic thing. It's very nice to think in this world today that people are going to find you because you're so great. We have 100,000 sources of information that compete for our attention all the time. If you want to stand out, you have to make yourself stand out. So then it was like, okay, how do I develop presence? And the process of developing sort of the personal brand that way. And this could be done online. This could be done also within a community. You want to be known for something, whatever it is within your social circle. This is also like one of the fundamental problems with agreeableness. If you are agreeable all the time, then you're not known for anything except being a lackey. If you're known for something and something useful, they'll seek you out, or they'll at least know what you're about. And then you can start building upon that quality. So whatever it is your area of expertise is in, who are the people that need it? How do you embody it where you can let people know about it? And then within your own social circles, how can you become the guy that is that guy? Obviously with the Manosphere branding, like the Chad Jesus thing cracks me up, but I'm like, I kind of ran with that. I'm like, you know what? That's a good brand. It certainly differentiates you, right? Okay, great, whatever. Whether it's arrogant, I look like an asshole, I don't really give a shit, so fuck you all. Like, but that's always been my attitude my whole life. Which when you're in, operating within like the digital realm, like you need to have the attitude of not caring, since otherwise you go crazy. On a professional level, I'm not professional, obviously, so I would die in a professional environment. But when I was working in a professional environment, the one thing I was known for is that I was very excellent. I was the best at what I did. So even if you had a lot of bad qualities to yourself, if you can kill that and then charge enough and nothing else, yeah, you'll be able to create a livelihood.
Thank you.
Very welcome. We're out of time.
That's about all the time we have. We have time for one more here. Want to get it? Go for it, man.
Good.
Last question.
So thank you for that speech. My question is, well, you said as a young man, many will sort of kind of force themselves into that list, you know. So what is the line between forcing it and it actually being natural?
The ideal to this, the perfect ideal, if things were perfect in the world, is that everything that you would need to be, you would naturally be. So that's the idea of like the natural alpha, the natural this, the natural that. And in some level, there are people who are naturally talented in certain areas. That's true. Guys who are, let's say, everyone knows this from when you were young. They're the guys who are really good athletes. They're the guys who are taller than everybody else. They're the guys who are that much faster than them, stronger. So naturalness is real in that regard. No man is naturally good at everything, though. That doesn't exist. So that idea that, okay, this feels, let us say, inauthentic. I feel like I'm an imposter doing this. When does it become authentic? At one time, I'd get very deep into the mindset of like, okay, like why do you feel like you're an imposter? Like what are you grappling with? At a certain point, though, I realized that was just a lot of wasted time. If you do anything for long enough, you will become that thing. This is that's sort of that rough paraphrase of the Aristotle quote. Excellence is what you do every day, and it's true. You are what you do every day. Now, if it feels unreal to you and unnatural and forced on day one, it's not going to feel that way on day 1,000. So a lot of the cognitive dissonance that some of you may have with, I feel like I'm imposing upon this, or I feel like I'm faking this, you are right now, but you won't be in 2 years, or 3 years, or 5 years, or 10 years. You won't. You won't. Now, you can always argue with, I know guys, they've been successful for 20 years, and they're still, they still feel like an imposter. Okay, let's get into the mindset then. But for the vast majority of men, simply by repeating the thing and practicing the habit, by practicing discipline, you will become that thing. And you have to also just deal with the unknown and the uncertainty. And that's also part of the learning curve of it itself. Like, this doesn't feel right, I'm uncomfortable, mentally, I don't like it. That's okay. It's not supposed to feel good on day 1 or day 10 or day 20 or day 30. It will feel better on day 1,000. But that initial curve, it's sort of like almost like a slow hockey stick. You're rising, this is uncomfortable, I'm afraid, I'm fearful. Okay, this is becoming better. And then you'll hit a point where when you finally have honed something to the level of instinct, where it's internalized within you, that drops off and you stop thinking about it so much. You really don't think about it at all. But that takes time. That's sort of, I don't want to say the 10,000 hour rule, since that was kind of revealed as bullshit, but that takes a certain amount of hours, it takes a certain amount of days before it becomes entirely habitualized. Many people become good at things and they have no idea really why, simply because they were led into doing it constantly. Anyone that had a very disciplined father, anyone that had a disciplinarian for a father where he made you do, let's say, physical stuff, where he made you study something, or you had to recite this or memorize that, you just got good at because you had to. And you probably don't question that part of your personality so much, like my father made me do this, and this is what I had to do. That's just how it was. Yeah, so now this is a characteristic I have. Yeah, how you feel about it, you can talk about feelings all the time. I'm not very feeling-oriented, obviously. Yeah, it's all, every life is action. No one gives a fuck what you felt when you're dead. So you follow that curve, you eventually get good at it, or it becomes instinctual. It goes from conscious incompetence to unconscious incompetence. I'm quoting my dad right now. Then you have conscious incompetence. Then you have conscious competence, where now you're actually getting good at it, you still think about it. And then you hit unconscious competence, now it's instinct, and then now you are that thing. And that will take as long as it needs to take. The best way to speed that up is to surround yourself with other men who are already skilled at it and also learning along with you, and then you'll just start adopting their traits. Social group reinforcement is one of the most powerful ways to recondition yourself. So if you want to speed that up, as I said, find guys who already are that or are closer to it than you, and just hang out together. Go do that thing with them. You will become it.
Gentlemen, that's all the time we have. Give it up one more time for AJ Cortez.